welcome. Germany, 10 o'clock. We start with our webinar today. It's our quarterly release webinar from product management. And from now on, we will call it Inside PRTG. And it's Q4 2024. And this time we have one question. Can PRTG do log management now? As I already said, we will give you some insights on the upcoming roadmap, but also introduce the Data Hub to you. If you've attended one of our webinars in the past, you know the drill. Please feel free to ask questions anytime during the webinar. The participants are always muted, and you will be sent a recording of this webinar in the next days. Please allow until the end of the week for the delivery. Normally, we will have a poll at the end of the webinar, but I can already tell you we have a lot of exciting news this time, so we are not quite sure if we actually will have that Q&A session at the end. So stick with us, but as I already said, feel free to ask questions during the webinar. If you're wondering who's speaking right now, hello, my name is Dominik. I'm with Paessler since 2015. Yes, I'm getting old. I'm a product marketing manager, and if you want to reach me, you can see my email address here. But me just being the host, much more important, our speakers today are Christoph and Joerg, and I'm handing over to them to introduce them.
Good morning. My name is Christoph, and I work for Paessler as a global technical product evangelist, and I'm happy to guide you through the presentation today.
Hi, my name is Joerg. I'm a product manager at Paessler. I work on PRTG. I'm 10 years with the company now, and I started as a business development manager for the Netherlands and the Nordic region. Perhaps some of you guys out there still know me from that time.
So, PRTG release highlights in Q4. What are you up to? Many of you already are using the multi-platform probe, so we will get another overview. We already introduced it in the Q3 webinar. We'll give you some more details into the opportunity and options with the multi-platform probe, and also we'll inform you about the new sensors and developments. Then we have very exciting news. We have a new audit log, and we will tell you all about that as well. And I already told you we have a new extension. Very excited about that as well. The PRTG Data Hub, a lot of exciting possibilities, and this will be the highlight of this webinar at the end. So, November 12th was the stable release for PRTG. Today is November 26th, and depending on how you set the notification in on your Christmas sensor, December 24th is coming up soon. So if you did not get gifts already, so now's the time. But all joking aside, we will start with the real content now, and I'm heading over to my colleagues from product management.
Thank you, Dominik. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the new opportunities in regards to the multi-platform probe. And I want to share some information regarding the multi-platform probe with you. First of all, let's take a look at the evolution of the PRTG probes. You all know the standard classic remote probe that was based on a Windows installation. We have stepped up and introduced Linux as an operating system for the multi-platform probe, we call it. And now we have done the last step and containerized this application so that you can run it on every architecture that you might think of. So what are the key benefits and use cases for this? Well, we have pointed out three things today. The first thing would be the opportunity to run a Windows-less monitoring with our hosted option, meaning that you can monitor almost everything without adding new Windows servers on your installation, and doing so in a very cost-efficient way, meaning you have no expenses for new Windows licenses. You can deploy it on OT hardware and not so powerful IT hardware, and by that save costs for energy and the hardware itself. And last but not least, your maintenance costs will also decrease because of less needs for maintenance on Linux than there are on Windows. Another interesting aspect is cross-platform monitoring. As I already mentioned, you can monitor almost anything now from Linux and you can use modern and very cost-efficient architectures like ARM and also containerize the application itself. As I said, you can deploy it on very cost-effective hardware like a Raspberry Pi, also ARM-based CPU, and also Intel NUCs, or in the OT world, PLCs and things like this. Another option is to expand your existing setup without adding additional Windows servers to it. And the last opportunity would be to increase your compliance and your security policies, or meet the expectations from there, because we have environments where Windows is not allowed as an operating system, or strict encryption policies are enforced, like TLS 1.3, and we match all of them. Now, a third thing that I want to point out is the containerized monitoring. We want to make sure that you are maximum flexible in your deployment. So you can deploy the multi-platform probe on things like network devices or NASes if you have access to them. And you can also deploy it in an OT environment on PLCs and industry PCs and routers and so on. So you're maximum flexible here. And you can utilize, if you are not a CLI junkie, let's call it, and want to use a graphical user interface, you can use tools like Portainer, so a Docker management system that is widely known and used for your deployment. Last but not least, as I already mentioned, the compliance and security part is also of much interest here. The requirements should be met without a problem. So a containerized monitoring with a probe will be split from the original operating system and allows for enhanced security and manageability here. So as a result, we would see the reachability for everything that you couldn't reach previously. You see the edge devices on the left, up to the public or private cloud on the right. So we want to make sure that you have the option to monitor everything and get anything in reach that was maybe unreachable before. Now, if we once again take a look at the topology of the multi-platform probe, you have mainly three components. One is a NAT server. This is an open source messaging system that allows for reliable transport of data, which connects to the probe adapter, a software component that runs on your core server. And the third thing is the multi-platform probe, one or multiple of them that run and connect to the NAT server itself. Now, your question might be, what happens in case there is a disconnect between those components? You might know that the traditional probe had a feature that was called caching. So it was storing data and sending them to the core server, and in case the connection was reestablished. We've managed to build something like this in the multi-platform probe now too. And with the newest versions, we will provide support for this. So if you install the latest PRTG version 1.02 and the new multi-platform probe 3, which was released a few days ago, then you would have support for the caching feature. There's another requirement. You will find all those details in the manual. I've checked this for you. You can have a read there. You have to configure a so-called Jetstream feature in NATS, or maybe just reinstall it with this feature, run the latest multi-platform probe installer, and then you will have support for it. In case any of these requirements are not met, the multi-platform probe has a fallback option to the previous non-caching mode. And now the important question, when will I get it? Instantly, as soon as you install the multi-platform probe 3.x. Now, what are current and next steps with the multi-platform probe? You'll have a caching and buffering feature, as I just mentioned, to prevent you from loss of data in a case of interruption between the multi-platform probe and the core server. You will see that we have adopted a lot of new sensors, mainly based on the SSH section. So we have a meminfo, we have a load average, and we have a remote ping, and soon to be released a disk-free sensor. And another addition would be the SNMP UPS status sensor that was requested multiple times. If you take a look at the roadmap, the next thing that you will see will be more REST-based sensors on the probe, like AWS, Azure, Zoom, and Microsoft 365. They will be released in the 1.04 or so in the start of next year. And we have also done another interesting concept work. So we are planning to provide you with sensor migration in the background, meaning if you have old sensors, let's call them, so V1, and we have released the V2, we will see a migration from 1 to 2 in the background without manual intervention. This is an important point, and we're working on this. The work has already started, but the migration of sensors specifically start in the first quarter of the next year, and they will be a continuous process throughout all the sensors that we provide. Last but not least, for those of you who run the Python script sensor, we plan to deprecate this Python script sensor, and we have a replacement already in place with a script V2 sensor, which provides for Python scripts. So the deprecation will happen in steps. Don't be alarmed, but maybe you can already look if you can migrate your code to the script V2 sensor. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
Cool, that was the multi-platform feature that you guys probably already know, but we think it was worth repeating and also showing you what next steps will come, what have we done in the last couple of weeks since the Q3 update, and now to the next feature. And you see Audit Log there. Obviously it has something to do with getting audit ready for you as a company, and also something with logs. So what is it all about? Let's have an overview before Christoph explains. So what's the situation if we look at logs in PRTG today? And we're talking about logs that PRTG creates and not external application logs. Well, the information is distributed across several parts of the product and the UI. It is difficult to view the infos, and there's also no export functionality at the moment for sending the logs outside of PRTG. Customers have already asked for the ability to forward PRTG logs to maybe a SIEM system. Here the motivation is to have an extra piece of security and to be ready in case of an external audit. So how are we going to change the usability of internal PRTG logs in the next release? Christoph, tell us.
Yeah, thank you, Jörg. We are trying to cope with this problem in a way that you requested from us. So in the future, you will have the option to collect this sensitive data about the PRTG software operations like login attempts and permission changes and so on, and have them accessible in just one place. And we do this by exporting this kind of data in a continuous stream to a syslog server or a SIEM system that you might already operate. So how does this work? You know your syslog, you know your SIEM and SIEM systems. Normally you would transmit something like this in a UDP format and an encrypted, which is possible with our solution, but we extended it so you can already use a safe and secure transfer via TLS and TCP if you desire. And we have already, besides the traditional syslog format, implemented the CEF format, the common event format, which is standard for many SIEM systems and all things that collect firewall logs. With this, PRTG will conform to the requirements from the security operations teams and also provide you support for audits as they might occur. So I've brought some screenshots. They're a little bit, the font is a little bit small, but just so you know, you will find under the core and probe section all the parameters that you could configure. So your destination, the protocol that you want to use, if you want to use encryption or not, and if you have it in place, your own certificate management, then you can also provide your own certificates and ensure that encryption is in place when transferring your secure data. Another option that you will have is in your notifications. We have expanded this new system to the existing syslog notifications, so you can also use it in a way that I just described with the TLS option and send notifications in a secure and encrypted manner. That's basically it for the audit log.
Thanks, Christoph. Very cool. So we've focused quite a bit on logs in the last months, but not only with the Audit Log topic, but also with the next one, which is the new extension that we're going to launch. And please welcome Paessler PRTG Data Hub. And with the Data Hub, we're entering the world of logs for Paessler. So what's the situation again today? In the past decades, Paessler has always concentrated on metrics. And metrics has been the basis for our monitoring that we do. But in a time with increased compliance and regulatory requirement, that's not enough anymore. More and more stakeholders want to have logs also outside of PRTG. Why? Well, log messages deliver considerably more context than just a single number. And they also demand more storage effort. That's why we've started to develop the PRTG Data Hub, which is an extension for log handling and event-based monitoring. PRTG Data Hub is a relay that helps you with duplicating and forwarding of UDP traffic, such as logs of systems and applications. Security-conscious companies can continue to rely on PRTG and use their syslog and trap data traffic, for example, also in other endpoints. The Data Hub enables the monitoring use case in PRTG for you and the forensic use case with a log management system or a SIEM system that you own. But that's not all. PRTG Data Hub is more than just a simple relay. It allows filtering for IP addresses, for example, severity in case of syslog. You can decide which message you would like to have an eye on, which one you would like to drop. And you can also filter for text elements in your message so that your log collection is really focusing on the bare necessities. PRTG Data Hub is a pipeline which will save you time and money. You can also keep the state of devices in PRTG Data Hub and request it from outside with the REST custom sensor. This means flipping sensors like the syslog or trap receiver sensor are a thing of the past now. Why collect logs at all? Well, PRTG Data Hub allows you to address compliance and data collecting topics stipulated by security teams next door, maybe auditors from outside if you're inside of an ISO process, or insurance companies that demand you to collect logs, or maybe governmental bodies if you're in something like a NIS2 process that you need to comply to. So, Christoph, can you help me out? How does that look architectural-wise with the PRTG?
Yeah, of course. We've brought you a sort of lab setup to demonstrate how this works. So on the left part, you see a syslog injection tool here in exchange for infrastructure that you would operate. And then the next point of the architecture will already be the Data Hub. So this is your central gateway where you send all your UDP-based traffic, may it be NetFlow, logs, or traps, into. And from the Data Hub, there starts the filtering and relaying. So from the Data Hub, we have two, let's say, endpoints here in this lab. One of them would be Paessler PRTG, where you can store this kind of data in a syslog receiver sensor or in a Data Hub sensor to your liking. And the other section would be your syslog server or your SIEM that you already might operate. So, and in consequence, we have best of both worlds. So PRTG does what it does best. It does alarmings, and you can use dashboards and notifications on it. And the other system, like a syslog server, will do the storing and the deeper analysis, which PRTG isn't supposed to do anyway. So that's the basic architecture.
Thanks a lot, Christoph. Here are some typical use cases that we found in the last couple of months. And The first one is the loss of use insurance. Perhaps you own one of those insurance contracts. During the first peak of ransomware attacks that the industry hit, these type of insurance were very popular. And many insurance companies make their clients collect logs and store them for at least 60 days and make them available for external forensics companies. The second case is NIST2 or NIST in the US. It's an information security framework for companies that provide essential services like water or electricity. But even food supply or data center services can fall under this regulation. And also here, companies need to collect logs and store them for long term. The third one that we've met is the market-specific information security programs that are out there. One to mention is TSEX in the automobile sector. If your company is a supplier for one of the big car producers, it's very likely that you need to comply to the TSEX rules. And also here, you need to collect logs and store them for longer and act upon them. The fourth case we've already talked about is the persistent monitoring case, where keeping the state of the last message is essential. With the Data Hub, we can rebuild the syslog receiver and trap receiver use case and make the message permanent in PRTG. What are the requirements for the Data Hub? Currently, it's available on Linux, and we've tested it on Debian 12. But it also works on an Ubuntu 24.04. And for all of you who are not so much into Linux, we're working on a Windows version that is planned for the next year. But I can say that so far the feedback that we get is more towards Linux. So most people that we've talked to want to run this on Linux. It works on hardware. It works on a virtual machine. We expect to see a lot of container installations out there. We'll see how this develops. A minimum of 2 cores is needed, but the developers tell me all the time it would also run on a toaster. I'm waiting for the first tickets where people try that out. Let's see what we will get. It's very lightweight. You need definitely to be able to write YAML configuration files. But don't worry, we have examples in the documentation that will help you if you're not doing that on a daily basis. A UI is planned for the next year, so there is definitely something coming for the more graphical focused people out there. And ports, of course, ports need to be available to get the messages in. We've also focused on the syslog and SNMP trap messages first. But collecting Windows event logs is in preparation. I know from talks at exhibitions and with customers that that's also in the problem space of you guys out there. Event logs need to be collected and forwarded. There are no limits for device sources or limits of endpoints at the moment. And the communication is TLS secured, and you can be safe. Sure that it's a safe communication. We've also found that the use case that customers have endpoints that demand TLS communication, while the sources that they have cannot offer this. So this is another interesting point where the Data Hub can help. Perhaps that's also a situation in your company. User management is also in place with admin and user level. And to connect the Data Hub with PRTG, our sensor team has created 3 sensors. There is the process sensor first, which is taking a look at the Data Hub machine. You want this machine to work fine, and therefore monitoring it with the PRTG is definitely a good idea. And then we have the traffic sensor, which is looking at the entire traffic going into the Data Hub and out of it. So you can already identify peaks there. And we have the rule sensor, which is looking at the single rule, the single use case that you have configured for perhaps one group of devices where you want to collect the logs. Here at this slide, you can see the configuration file, so very clean, nothing to worry about. With the examples that we have, you will get that done, don't worry. On the right side, you see the rule sensor in PRTG, some nice channels, 7 channels. So really cool sensor to connect this to the Data Hub and also have your monitoring in place for the logs. So another overview, what do you get with PRTG Data Hub? It allows event-based monitoring, which you can act upon. It enables a permanent storage for your logs outside of PRTG in a different solution. And forensics are enabled in case of issues. You can now look what happened outside of PRTG, maybe in your SIEM solution. And it makes log handling more flexible for the organization and more cost efficient, probably too. So let's take a look at the licensing. We found that this feature is especially interesting for people with 2,500 sensor subscription and higher. Therefore, we've integrated it into the subscription. And if you register with the QR code on this page, we will make sure you get the installation file as soon as the Data Hub is available. And people with 500 and 1,000 sensor subscription, they get a quote from us. But before we come to the Q&A, hopefully we have time for that. Dominic, can you recap the webinar a bit? What have we heard today?
Yeah, of course. So what's new in Q4? I would say a lot is new. So you heard about the PRTG Data Hub, our new extension, free of charge from your subscription from 2,500 sensors on. It will help you tremendously with handling of UDP messages and much more. We have the new Audit Log. It's coming to give you more PRTG transparency. And the multi-platform probe, which you already love from what we hear from you, is now stable and has caching integrated, which is crucial, as many of you know. And we have now time to answer some questions. And what we also have would be a little poll for you, which you are invited to answer. So from what you heard from the Data Hub, if we are just interested in your opinion, if you are happy to test it, if you're willing to give it a try. And if I have a look, the overwhelming majority of you says the added value is great, but we need more time at this point, which is of course perfectly fine, but it's always good that we get positive feedback like this. Then Q&A. Do we already have some questions? So the question is, when do you think that TCP support will be added to the Data Hub? And Joerg, can you answer this question?
Let me jump in here. We think that event logs is more important at the moment, so the team is already working on that. Also, a Windows version is what we want to have. TCP support I see during the year, but before we bring TCP, I would definitely write more API calls for a UI that we would like to have. So I guess we would focus on that in Q3, but it's not decided yet.
Another question, when will the certificate handling process for the multi-platform probe be easier? So is this something that maybe Christoph can answer?
Yes, I sure can. So you're referring to the problem that currently, if you want to set up your own certificates, you have to do this manually. Currently, you don't have a problem if you use the multi-platform probe with our hosted offering, because this is a publicly trusted certificate. We have identified this problem, and the team is currently working on easing up that problem, like you know it from the traditional setup where you have an assisted installer for this kind of certificates. We are working on it. Yeah, we heard you.
When will the feature of forwarding audit logs to SIEM will be available?
I can take over. So the feature of forwarding logs from the Data Hub is already available. That's the main function, let's say.
No, it's regarding the audit log.
The audit log. The audit log just got put into our regular version yesterday, so I will expect it for the Q1 2025, sorry, in February, I guess.
Yeah, must be 104, PRTG 104, I think.
And you can, what we didn't mention, you can of course combine those two products, so you could as well push logs from PRTG into the Data Hub and distribute it, so that if PRTG becomes part of your audit log process, then you can use both tools simultaneously.
So we have another question. When will you focus some effort on achieving easy monitoring capabilities for containers orchestras like Kubernetes?
Well, we have some plans for Kubernetes sensor, but before we do a Kubernetes sensor, I think we will see a Docker sensor, and maybe we will see a Prometheus sensor, but there are definitely plans. You've seen that we also rework the existing sensors to be capable to run on the multi-platform probe, and that's the main work our sensor team is doing at the moment. And we have 300 something sensors, as you might know. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We've talked to the team, and we also want to have new sensors for new capabilities. We know that you guys out there are moving into containers, into orchestration applications as well, and these need to be monitored. So as product management, we're after that. We're not just transferring sensors, we also want to have new ones, and a Kubernetes sensor is definitely one that we would like to see, but there is no timeline for it at the moment. I hope in 2025 we will see this sensor.
What will happen with the existing syslog sensor?
People are afraid we're going to turn it off. No, we're not going to turn it off. Don't worry. If we take a sensor out, just like Christoph announced with the Python script sensor, there's a process behind it, and we warn you guys early enough with different measures like emails. There will be pop-up tickets, admin tickets in PRTG itself. So you're warned early enough to rebuild your use case, and we will offer you also workarounds or a transition. The syslog trap receiver sensor, their behavior is maybe not as expected in many cases, and the Data Hub helps to improve this. We want to improve this further. We want to come up with different solutions, but we're not going to turn off the sensor tomorrow, so don't worry.
That sounds great. Speaking of great, thanks for sharing the great news, like in general, but especially with the Data Hub. And the question for Q1, what kind or formats of incoming logs are supported by the Data Hub?
So in Q1, I think in the Q1 we will see event logs in the version 1.01, which will be then, I'm not sure if that's going to be in January or February. It depends on how fast the team is. At the moment, UDP, as you've heard, and mostly syslog and SNMP traps, and then we will see event logs.
When will PowerShell scripts come to multi-platform probe?
We know this is a use case, the PowerShell sensor that you guys out there want to have desperately, and we're already looking into the sensor and redoing the sensor and doing that. I think it's going to be Q2 more than Q1, because you've seen in Christoph's slides, it's more SSH at the moment. We're looking more at transferring those sensors at the moment, and then we'll focus on others. But there's definitely a list coming up of the most important ones, and the PowerShell one is on there.
When is your downtime sensor report available? It will be a challenge for a daily review for 1,000 sensors.
Well, the SLA reporter definitely helps to answer there. In the product, we've not planned a change on reporting yet. If you're looking at a downtime report, then try the SLA reporter. It definitely helps you there.
Then, is it possible for users with free license to subscribe for PRTG Data Hub? This won't be possible. We will have this extension exclusively for our subscription customers. As already mentioned, it will be included in your subscription from 2,500 sensors onwards. Below that, you can get a quote, but it's no focus for our freeware at this point. What's the expected performance impact in PRTG for the Data Hub? So if you have any info about that, we can share it with the group and then call it a day.
In our testing, we've not found any performance impacts for PRTG. Yeah, at the moment, with the testing capabilities that we have here, what we can say, there is no real impact.
Just from personal experience, I can tell you I've set up an installation in my own lab, and with a moderate i3 processor and 4 GB of RAM, I managed to push millions of log lines per day without the CPU even noticing. So you shouldn't run into some heavy resource problems here. This is not very resource intensive.
And if you know Christoph, you know that this is his definition of a perfect Saturday evening. So, thanks for your time. We got through a lot of questions in the end. And from what we heard, you are as excited as we are for our new developments. The next quarterly webinar will be in March 2025, probably early 2025, March. And we are looking forward to seeing all of you until then. Take care. Bye-bye.